Coronavirus video number 1, take 12. Welcome to the first of what I hope is a short series of PowerPoint video notes from home. Because of the coronavirus, I'm having to alter things and adapt to different ways of teaching. I hope me doing PowerPoints this way works for you. The title is actually The Final Solution. I apologize. The final gets cut off. That's because I'm working off of my Chromebook. Okay, but that is the title, The Final Solution. And that's what Hitler called it. In fact, he had a longer name for it. He called it the final solution to the Jewish question. And that, of course, is Hitler in the middle. To the right, I think you know who that is. That's Adolf Eichmann, and I believe Mrs. Lazos taught about him. The man on the left, I'm not so sure you know about. That's Reinhard Heydrich. Okay, and I'll talk about all three of them as I go through this presentation. Okay, so here we go. Nothing to Wannsee here. In January 1942, the Wannsee Conference was conducted in secrecy. It was so secretive it was held in the Wannsee chain of the largest Swiss Alps, in a palatial home with a professional chef, waitstaff, and more. There were 30 guests. All were, in quotes, professionals, including doctors, lawyers, governmental personnel, military men, and I do believe one priest. And it was there that they were to define who was and who was not Jewish. I'll give you an example. They had a terminology. The word was mishlinga. If you had one parent who was Jewish and one parent who was not Jewish, in the eyes of the law, you were considered Jewish. And anything above that, you were considered Jewish. So if you had 3 Jewish grandparents, 1 non-Jewish grandparent, you were considered Jewish. They also had to come up with definitions for oddities. For instance, what if you were not a practicing Jew, but you were born Jewish? Were you Jewish? And the answer was yes. What if you were Jewish by birth, you were adopted by non-Jews? The answer was you were Jewish. What if you were non-Jewish and you were adopted by Jews? The answer was you were Jewish. Time and again, they erred on the side of you were Jewish. Okay? And the Germans were insanely good record keepers. And it was very difficult in the eyes of German law to say you were not Jewish if you were deemed as such. Okay, once they established who was and who was not Jewish, then they had to figure out what once and for all to do about the Jews. And once they decided that it was too difficult to move them out, nobody was taking Jews, or virtually nobody was taking Jews. The United States took a paltry 1,200 Jews throughout the entirety of the World War II years. China took the most, I think around 30,000, but almost nobody was taking Jews. And we talked about the HMS St. Louis and how it was so difficult for the Jews on board that boat to go anywhere. And so every time Hitler conquered a new place, a new country, like France, like Poland, like the Sudetenland, which we know now as Czechoslovakia, he inherited their Jews, so to speak. And he wanted to know how to get rid of them. So at the conference, they decided that they were to be exterminated quietly and quickly, and not necessarily in that order. Now, Hitler was not at the conference. Hitler was not at the conference. Hitler did not want to be connected to these crimes in any way, shape, or form, and there was to be no paper trail to him, which you'll see a little bit later in the notes here. Heydrich co-chaired the conference with Eichmann. And they got to work when the conference was over on charting exactly who was and who was not Jewish. And if you were to be exterminated. So Heydrich was placed in charge of the final solution, and he took a sick glee in carrying out his orders. The thing was, Heydrich died in 1943. The Czechoslovakians their intelligence was marking him. And they figured he was moving from one conference or one meeting to another meeting, and their intelligence told him where he would be, and they got a hold of him and they wounded him. He eventually wound up back in German hands again, but he was injured so badly that he died while in their possession while trying to recover. So that meant that Eichmann was now in charge. Now, Eichmann perhaps is best known for, after the war was over, escaping and going to Argentina, where in the year 1960 he was actually discovered. He was living under false pretenses, false name, and he was discovered. And eventually, a team of Israeli special operatives came into Argentina, took him away in the middle of the night, brought him back to Israel, stood trial, and they executed him. 6 death camps would be created. All 6 would be located and hidden in conquered Poland. Poland had the highest percentage of Jews of all the conquered territories. They also had the highest number of Jews. And the most in a concentrated area, of course, were in Warsaw, right? That walled-in ghetto. But they had other ghettos also in Poland. And it made the most economical sense, and it made the most sense in terms of speed to build the death camps in Poland. And it didn't hurt that you could keep the secret a little bit better if they were in Poland and they were not in Germany. And this way you wouldn't upset any German citizens who didn't want for this to be happening in their backyard. As it were, there were over 100 concentration or labor camps in Germany. Now, they were not designed to kill you. The death camps were. And I'll explain about that more in a little while. No paper trail to Hitler of any kind. Hitler did not want to be associated with these crimes. I don't know that he thought he could get away with it. I doubt he thought he could get away with it. I think what he thought was Germany would win the war and they would have to answer to no one. I think this was more of a just in case he had to answer for these crimes, but he did not want for there to be any kind of a paper trail to him. And actually, he was too cowardly to go to any of the camps himself. He did not show up at any of the death camps, and he did not show up at any of the concentration camps. I think that he knew that if he saw what took place there, he might have a hard time swallowing it. And so his feeling was out of sight, out of mind, and cowardly, he did not go to any of those camps at any point throughout the Holocaust. Various methods of killing have been tried. Mass gassings won out as speed was of the essence. The first way with which Jews were killed in large numbers was through Zyklon B gassings in vans. There were these vans that were specially built to have the tailpipes go back into the back of the van where they would store approximately 15 or 20 Jewish people. The driver of the van would be blocked or shielded from the back of the van so that the fumes would not get to him. And his job was to drive around until he didn't hear any poundings on the walls of the van. At that point, he knew that everybody was dead. That took too long for Hitler's tastes. That's when he started going to mass executions through machine gunning. And typically, Jews would be put together in large numbers, like, say, 50 or 100, and they would dig their own long trench ditches for themselves. And then they would all be machine gunned at the same time. That was too slow for Hitler. And then eventually he resorted to the death camps, and he resorted to the gassings in the phony showers, right? The fake shower heads. I know you know what I'm talking about. I won't go into detail with that. The death camps were designed to kill. The labor or concentration camps were designed to extract labor out of you. And if you died in the process, which was very common, the attitude was, oh, well, so be it. The death camps were designed to kill you. In the case of Auschwitz, it was designed to extract labor out of you first. There was an Auschwitz and an Auschwitz II. That's how big it was. The sizes of Poughkeepsie and Newburgh combined. And they would try to get work out of you. And then when you were too weak to work anymore, that's when they would have you eliminated. Joseph Mengele, the doctor of death, seemed to take a sick passion in all of this. He was Hitler's go-to doctor, if you will. There were probably 200 to 300 doctors who were a part of these perverse experiments. They claim that they were in the name of science. That's really hard to agree with. Mengele seemed to really enjoy his work. He always had Hitler's ear and vice versa, and they always seemed to be on the same page. They both had a sick fascination about twins. I'm not sure if Mengele gave Hitler the idea or Hitler gave Mengele the idea, but the idea behind the fascination with twins was there had to have been something from their perspective that made them multiply. There had to be something in their genetic makeup. And I'll give you an example. So today, now, sometimes if a woman has been trying to have a baby and she has been unable to for years and years and years, she might go to a fertility clinic. And at the fertility clinic, they might give her some kind of pill that would help her chances of reproduction. And sometimes those women who had such a hard time getting pregnant, sometimes instead of having the one baby, thanks to the pills, sometimes they have twins or they have triplets. That's the kind of science that Hitler and Mengele were looking at, because they were looking to increase the number of Aryans, right? The blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white-skinned Germanic speakers. That race, in quotes, that Hitler thought was the greatest, the mightiest in the world. And if you could control that, if you can control this idea of twins or triplets or what have you, you could increase your population at a quicker rate. And therefore Hitler could have this large, unbeatable, in his mind, army. So that was the sick idea behind all of that. I won't get into the experiments. The effort to exterminate Jews was arguably top priority for Nazi Germany. I would say it was top priority towards the end of the war for Nazi Germany. By late 1944, especially after the failed Operation Barbarossa, right? Americans called that the Battle at the Bulge. That was really Hitler's last-ditch effort to try to win the war, and it failed. It was bloody, and he inflicted a lot of damage upon the Americans, but it still was a failure overall on Germany's part, and at that point, it became quite obvious that they were going to lose the war. So rather than keep men on the front line fighting and suing for peace, that's the phrase, right? You try to get out of the war in better terms. He thought better than to do that would be to send all of these men, not all, but many of these men, into the death camps to speed up the process of killing the Jews. So towards the end of the war, he was trying to kill the Jews at a faster rate. He put more energy into that than he was trying to win the war or trying to get out of the war on halfway decent terms. And I think if he had another month or two, he would have killed every single last Jew, because towards the end, he was killing around 50,000 a day. And if you did the very sad math, it amounted to 12 million who died in the Holocaust, of which 6 million were Jews, 5 million were Soviets. He hated Russians, Soviets, communists, as much as he hated Jews, and 1 million gypsies, mostly Romanians. He did not like them either. If Hitler had a totem pole of hatred, those three groups would be at the top. And at the bottom would be the Americans and the English. He disliked them the least of the groups that he disliked. He always thought that they had something in common. He twice in the middle of the war sent secret communications over to the Americans to try to get them to switch sides and fight with the Germans, if you can believe that, because he thought that we had more in common with them than we did with the people that we were fighting for. So that's really all I have to say on this particular lesson. And I hope you got something out of it. And I'll do some more of these in the coming days. Okay? Be well. Make sure you take care in this coronavirus crisis. Make sure you're social distancing yourself from others. Okay? And I hope to see you guys soon. Okay, bye.